probably 15 years ago, it could have been a little bit longer, 15, 18 years ago, I went to a couple of the big shots at ESPN. And I said, if I was you, I would buy the UFC. And ESPN had a lot of East Coast people, a lot of baseball seam heads in management that just, lived for the Yankees and Red Sox, that thought that was much bigger than the NFL, anything else. And I said, I know it's not for you guys, and from here, it's Vegas, LA, but UFC is exploding. And they just didn't have the stomach for it. And I'm like, trust me, it's celebrities, it's high end, it's middle class, it's all classes. It's great. You've really got to, at the time, you could have purchased UFC, pennies on the dollar. It eventually sold for $6 billion. I've talked about before, I've tried to twice buy into the MLS. Back when it was $35 million a team, then it was $85 million a team. Now it's $500 million a team. MLS teams will be worth $1 billion within 5 years. So my dad invested in the stock market. I've been in it since 1989. I like investing in stuff. I've hit like anybody that's invested. But, I was thinking about this today, and many of you have a 401k, you've got a business. I think I really enjoy, playing the stock market, and I have for a long time. And, I was thinking if sports were a stock with this Jim Harbaugh story, you think to yourself, ooh, the Big Ten. Oh, I don't know if this is good for the conference. The singular stock I would buy in sports in North America today is college football, and specifically the Big Ten. I'll tell you why. So Michigan, Penn State got twice the audience, just inches shy of twice the audience of the SEC game with Georgia this past week. And this is going to continue going forward, not because Harbaugh's controversial. The Big Ten, by adding the West Coast, Seattle, Eugene, Los Angeles markets, to the Midwest, Chicago, Columbus, Ohio, Ann Arbor, Detroit markets. You already have the East Coast markets with Penn State, Philadelphia market, Rutgers, the New York, New Jersey market. You not only have 3 time zones represented, but the 3 biggest cities in those time zones: LA, Chicago, home of Northwestern and the Big Ten offices. And, Rutgers may not be, a power, but, it's the New York, New Jersey market. That's much more attractive to advertisers than an Alabama-Auburn audience. The biggest money in this country is north. It's in Seattle, Chicago, Boston, New York, Philadelphia. So advertisers are going to love this new conference. The biggest cities are now in each time zone represented: New York, Chicago, LA, not to mention, Detroit, Philadelphia. So, but by having 3 time zones, and Fox did it this weekend, it lets you stagger games. So 9 Pacific where I live, you could have the East Coast game. You could have Penn State hosting Oregon. Pretty good game. In the next time zone, you could have Michigan hosting UCLA. And then late afternoon, you could have Ohio State in Seattle or in Oregon or at USC. And then in the late window, you could have Oregon, Washington, USC, UCLA hosting another Big Ten team. Back to back, multiple games that don't have to overlap with each other. In the SEC, you only have 2 time zones. And overwhelmingly, the conference is based in 1 time zone, the Eastern time zone. And so you're going to have all these great games that are overlapped on top of each other. So the Big Ten is going to be, going forward, starting next year, just game after game, week after week of high-profile programs in affluent, wealthy northern markets, biggest cities: LA market, Chicago market, Philly market, New York market. It's a huge advantage for advertisers, and it's a huge advantage for the conference. Listen, we've all had fender benders in our life. Sometimes it's even more serious, but even if it's somebody else's mistake, you can lean on Morgan & Morgan. It's the nation's largest injury law firm. 100 offices and over 800 lawyers. With over $15 billion, that to be billion dollars recovered, Morgan & Morgan has a proven track record of fighting for you to get full and fair compensation. Submit an injury claim with Morgan & Morgan. It's really, really easy. It's almost like a quarterback, an offensive head coach, and a GM that gets them good weapons makes their life easier. We all need somebody, good or bad days, to make our life a little easier. That's what Morgan & Morgan does. If you're ever injured, check out Morgan & Morgan. Their fee is free unless they win. For more information, go to forthepeople.com/Colin or dial pound LAW, that's pound 529, from your cell phone. This is a paid advertisement. You know, the other thing is, I mean, this has always been, there's always been big cities represented, Michigan, Detroit, Penn State with Philadelphia, but now you're adding the Los Angeles market and the Seattle market. And the other thing that there's a big advantage here is Fox is the home of Big Ten football, the primary home. Well, Fox has a very football-centric network. So during the course of a college football season, they're going to promote the NFL, college football, and a little postseason baseball. ESPN has the SEC. They have far more sports to promote. They have a larger menu of sports to promote, which can dilute the promotion. The other thing that Fox has, which is a huge advantage, is Friday games. So it's Friday, 3 different time zones. Saturday, bigger northern markets for advertisers. Over the next 5 to 6 years, watch the Big Ten value explode, profile explode, television ratings explode. Listen, I love the SEC. You know, I even here out west, you know, I grew up watching Big East basketball when you had, you know, Hoya Paranoia, John Thompson, Louis Carnesecca at St. John's. I've never been a regional guy. I'll watch the best stuff. I didn't like Pac-12 basketball as a kid. I love the Big East. I've always loved SEC football. But I have found myself thinking about the choices I will make. And if you're giving me, people forget Oregon and Washington aren't just good programs. They're much closer to Ohio State than they are Iowa or Michigan State or Nebraska. Washington's had a great coach 4 times. Don James, they won a national title. Rick Neuheisel, they won Rose Bowls. Chris Peterson, they made the playoffs. Kalen DeBoer, they haven't lost in a year and a half. Every time Oregon's had a great coach. Mike Bellotti with Jeff Tedford, number 2 in the country. Mike Bellotti with Chip Kelly, dominant. Chip Kelly with Mark Helfrich, national championship game. Dan Lanning, top 5-6 team in the country. So Oregon and Washington are not just, you know, adding a better version of Michigan State or Iowa. When they have the right coach, these are top 10 programs. USC, eventually, a top 10 program. You know, Texas, Oklahoma are really, really good. Nobody would dispute that. But you could argue Texas is the most underachieving program in the country for the last 50 years. I love Texas, and I certainly would. And Oklahoma, is Brett Venables the right coach? We'll see. We'll see. I think they're going to have some recruiting issues eventually in the SEC, but we'll see. But regardless of the Harbaugh thing, and I'm an SEC fan, next year, if you're giving me Oregon, Ohio State, Michigan, USC, followed by Penn State, UCLA, I may watch parts of one SEC game. And I am not in any way saying the SEC won't have good recruiting classes and good teams. That's not what I'm saying. Watch the profile shrink of the SEC. Just go look at the Big Ten schedule. As somebody who's not an SEC or a Big Ten fan, you're me. You've moved all over the country. It's not close. It's not even close what games I'm going to watch. I've already looked at the schedule for the Big Ten and SEC. The Big Ten schedule is insane. You will not get me off Big Ten football next year. I don't say that because I work at Fox. I watch the SEC now, but it's going to change. This weekend, double the rating, Big Ten. It is going to change. I was talking to an executive months ago about Washington, Oregon, UCLA, USC added to the Big Ten. And he said, if sports were starting today, if you were creating a college football conference, you would literally create the Big Ten. You'd have like an LA, San Francisco, Seattle represented. In the Midwest, you'd want Chicago represented. And then in the East, you want Philly, Boston, New York, at least two of those three created. And he said, I mean, just think about this. He said, look at our presidential election. Like, what states will matter? Michigan, Ohio, Pennsylvania. He said, these are the discussed states. They decide our election. He goes, if you were starting today from scratch and creating a college football conference, you would create going forward what the Big Ten is. The economies, the cities, the discussion points, all different time zones.